Okay, so because the brief says that you need to have a 1-point and 2-point perspective, notice there's no requirement for rendering. It's highly encouraged, and we're going to keep going through using the materials and the lighting setup that you might have done to have these perspectives rendered. But again, that's not a requirement for submission, but it is a requirement that you have these two different types of perspectives. And because you're not drawing them, as you would be when you set up vanishing points, either drawing by hand or even using the drawing programs that will do these things these days, like Sketchbook and even AutoCAD, you can do set up perspectives. Just going to show you how you can do these with the camera, and it'll probably give you a better understanding of those other types of perspective drawing as well. So it's really important you realise that cameras and perspective are the same thing. They're just different ways of achieving a perspective view. And anyway, I'll talk to you about the history about it later. So on the little quick access toolbar there, you can always go to the camera tool from there, of course. If you can't find that, or if it's not working properly, it's on the view tab as well, and you've got the bigger button there, which basically does the same thing, and you've got camera tool there as well. And so notice I've got the ground floor plan open, or my lower level floor plan, whatever you called it. And then, again, I'm going to choose camera with that view open. And so the first one I'm going to do is a 1-point perspective. So the basic principle of a 1-point perspective is that the line from the camera, which I'll place first, I'm going to click to place the camera. The line from the camera to the target is parallel with the main lines of the thing you're trying to show, in this case a building. So the line of my target from the camera is parallel with those side walls there, and perpendicular to the back wall. So the back wall is going to be like our picture plane. Again, we don't need to set those things up like you would if you're drawing them, but you still want to have some awareness of that. So I'll click, and notice, I'll just put in a couple of things before I finish it. The height, if you're wondering how to set the height of your camera, you can type that in on the options bar there. But the default height's pretty good. That's basically eye height for most people. And then it's set again from the ground floor level because of the plan I had open, but you can change it to a different level. And notice there's one really cool option, I think, which you'll use later, and I'll show you some great tricks you can do with this. You can turn the perspective off. So you can make a non-perspective camera, which, believe it or not, does have its uses. Mostly I use it for things like shadow diagrams. Shadow elevations is what I use it for. But there's some other good uses for it as well. So it's good just to know that those options are there, but I'm not going to change any of them. I'm just going to, again, move my target out from the camera. And the other thing we're looking at is the distance. So I'm going to make sure that my target isn't too close to the camera. I might show you what would happen if I'd make it too close. So I'll put it there just a couple of meters from my camera. And it'll create a view, but the problem is it's cropped. And you might have seen this already if you've had a view like this where it just suddenly stops. And if I go to shaded or realistic, you'll see it is stopping at that point. It's not just the lines, the whole view is cropped. So there's a couple of ways of getting around that. You can just turn the clipping off. I call it cropping, really, the right term for it's clipping. So in the properties there, you can see it's got far clip active. You can just turn that off. So that stops the clipping altogether. But probably the easier way of avoiding that is, again, when you make a camera, yeah, I'll just do it in the same spot. Take the target further away, because it bases the clipping on the distance of the target from the camera. So you don't have to take it all the way past what you want to see. If I put it near the bed there, the clipping will be behind that wall. So there we are. And you can also adjust it. So if I go back and open the ground floor plan, because I was in that camera view before, it's got the camera selected. But if it doesn't come up, you can bring up any camera. When you right click on the view name, say you've got a floor plan open, you can right click on any of those camera views and then choose show camera. And then it's going to show you the camera and the target, so you can adjust those. And then also the clipping plane, so you can use that to drag that further back or forward if you want to clip it. And that can be helpful. So that previous view, 3D view 5, if I turn far clip, so that's still the 6 properties, there we are. So I'll turn the clipping back on. And so now, so you can see it, I'll go to my floor plan again, right click on 3D view 5, show camera, and so there it is with the clipping really close to the camera, but I can always drag it out there. And clipping can be helpful because when you've got a really big model with lots of things, it can slow things down if you're showing too much in the view. But for a small building like this, just turning the clipping off is probably easier. So that's a one-point perspective. So we've got all of these lines coming from the walls and the floor that would converge to a vanishing point that's at the horizon, which would be about this level, and the vanishing point would be probably about there, somewhere in the middle. If we go to wireframe, it'll probably be easier to see that. And you can work it out. It sometimes is really helpful if you're going to go into Photoshop afterwards to manually put some lines over the top of your perspective views and work out where that vanishing point is. And then you can overlay things on top in Photoshop and get the perspective right. So that's a one-point perspective. So now to make it a two-point perspective, it's almost the same thing. So again, I'll make a camera. The only difference is that the line from the camera to the target isn't parallel with those walls. So if I make it at any other angle, so there you can see it's going up and to the right a little bit. So that now, it's hard with this building because it's quite narrow, but it does have different vanishing points. So maybe if I go to wireframe, it's a bit clearer. And then I'm just going to draw some lines over the top of this so you get the idea. And I'll have to do model lines, won't I? Okay, so these lines here would converge to a vanishing point up in the sky there. On in the middle of that door somewhere, roughly. And so these lines as well would converge to the same vanishing point. And I might just go back to hidden line and then, no, it's hiding my model line, so that's not going to work. But again, these lines here, again, the vanishing point would be in the middle of that door there somewhere. And then the lines going the other way, so on the stairs here you can see these other lines going up and to the left, would converge to another vanishing point that would be all the way over here somewhere. So that's a 2-point. So that's all you need for the assignment. But I'll just quickly show you, if you've ever wondered what a 3-point perspective is, if you haven't drawn them, a 3-point perspective generally has a vanishing point that's up above. So at the moment, we wouldn't have that because all of these vertical lines are parallel. And the reason they're parallel is because, I'm going to go to an elevation, so it's because the line from the camera to the target is parallel with the ground. So you can see, in other words, the camera and the target are at the same height. So if they're at the same height, that automatically will give you either a 1-point or a 2-point perspective. It's only when the target's at a different height, it goes up or down, then it becomes a 3-point. So if I go back to this, you can see now my target's up above the camera. So now these vertical lines are starting to converge to a point up in the sky. And you can do that, so you'll see that if you orbit. So when you orbit, just be careful when you orbit those camera views, if you go up or down, again you're changing the height of the camera or the target, and again you're going to get those vertical lines not being parallel. And it's generally something to avoid. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you have to do it to show certain spaces and things that have a height, but you generally want to avoid that because it makes things, well, the traditional argument was it makes things look like they're sloping, and especially in architectural designs where they've got lots of nice straight columns and they want it to all look like they're parallel, you don't want that converging effect. And again, this is why the ancient Greeks were obsessed with geometry, because they had the curve in their columns to avoid that perspective effect, and all sorts of tricky, amazing things that, again, it's still difficult to understand when you get into the maths of it, and but again, all from perspective. So here I'm trying to orbit to get my target to be the same height as the camera again, and it's difficult. I'm using Shift and the middle mouse button. So instead of using that option, you could go back to the elevation. So if I go to, say, the south elevation and then show that camera, I think it was 5. Oh, it's not too bad, maybe it was 6. Yeah, it was 6. Okay, so you can see there's my target, so I can bring that back down. That's much easier than trying to orbit. But I'll show you one last option to finish off. To control your camera views from inside the view, there's a couple of things to look at. You've got these controls on the edge of the view, that's for your field of view. You can definitely widen those out, or narrow them if you want to, but generally widen them out to make the view bigger. But just be aware of what you're doing when you do that, because if you look at that view now in camera, especially if in plan, especially if you've done any photography, you might have an idea what that's doing. And if you've done any photography with an SLR especially. So if you remember the main controls that you've got in a camera for widening the view, and pretty much, yeah, the aperture and the focal length. Yeah. Well, it is kind of changing the focus, but it's related to that. So the focal length does change the focus, but it also changes the field of view. So it widens and narrows that field of view using the focal length. And so this is doing exactly the same thing. So when that cone becomes wider, that is the field of view that's changing. So it's again, relates back to photography. So if we go and have a look at that view now, it's wider, but then when you bring it out really wide, you get these things that look distorted to our eyes, because that's effectively a really small lens, like a fisheye lens. It's still correct, but again, you don't want that thing that people don't expect to see, because our eyes have a lens that's closer to 50mm. So when you're getting this, would be about a 10mm lens, or even 5, and it just looks strange to our eyes. So again, just be aware of that. When you're dragging the field of view out too far, it can make the views look unusual. So that's definitely an option though, to change what you see in your camera views. You can drag the edges, but just don't go too far, and keep an eye on how things look. And then the other great control is the navigation wheel. So over here you've got full navigation wheel. If it doesn't give you that, just click on the down arrow and make sure you've got the full one, not those others. So with the full navigation wheel, then you've got all these other controls for your camera. So you've got the look tool, so that you just click and drag on these. So the look tool lets you change the direction the camera is looking. So in other words, it's moving the target or rotating the target around the camera, and that's a great option, different to orbit, because the target's not moving. Sorry, the camera's not moving, the target is, and that's great because you're not going to accidentally go, through a wall or anything like that. You're staying put. It would, absolutely. That's exactly, yeah. If I change it from not being parallel, yeah, it is 2-point now. Yeah. So that's probably a good 2-point view, because I can see all that shelving and everything. So that's look. Then you've got up-down's a great one, because that keeps the target and the camera parallel with the ground, and just moves them up and down together. So that's a good way of going up and down stories, especially, but also just going up and down a little bit inside a space. Oh yeah, and it's a really good way of controlling it, because often when you're trying to go up and down, you go in different directions without meaning to. So this just takes you straight up and down, like on an elevator. So centre's kind of good, but I'll let you work that one out. It's not as useful as I would have wanted it to be, but it's sometimes good. Orbit though is good to look at, because orbit here works a little bit differently to the one you get with your shortcut. So it's sometimes handy. And well, I'll show you zoom. because that also is changing the focal length or the lens size or the field of view, however you want to say it, in a different way. It's not changing the frame. And I've always struggled with this one a bit because it does move the camera, and technically it shouldn't, but it does in Revit. In other programs it doesn't. In 3ds Max, where you've got the same zoom control, the camera doesn't move. But Revit does. But then the other one that's great is walk. And this is the one people probably struggle with the most at first, but it's also one of the best. So if you ever want to walk through your space like you do in a computer game, this tool does that for you. So yeah, it's brilliant. So it's just, I wish they'd put WASD like every other program. Most other 3D programs now use the same navigation keys as games do, which is WASD on your keyboard. W is forward, S is backwards, D is backwards, S is backwards, D is right, A is left. You don't even think about them that way, you just put your fingers there and you'll see why they're like that. No, so Revit will have it before long, because I know they're talking about it, but for now you've got to use this walk tool. But it's still good to think about those keys, because when we get into Lumion and other programs, they have that. But yeah, with Revit, you've got to click and hold on the walk button, and then you get that blue dot. And the best thing at first is just to keep an eye on that. So when you hold down that walk, you'll see the blue dot, and obviously it won't move at first. As long as you hold your cursor down though, then you can move the arrow forward from that blue dot to go forward, come back. The reason I think people struggle with it is they just go, really quickly, and it's difficult to control. But if you keep an eye on that blue dot and just gradually move it, going more slowly as well, if you only move up a little bit, it just goes really quick if you move a long way from it. So yeah, it's great. So that's just backwards and forwards, and then we can turn. And again, as long as you do nice, smooth, slow movements, it's not that difficult to control really. So I can then go for a bit of a wander and have a good look. And I've got a program that records these, it's really good. Just do a quick animation. That's right, yeah. See, SketchUp does have the right navigation keys, and it's one thing I wish they'd just put into Revit as well. But this does work when you get it. Okay, so you need other software if you want to record this one. There's an animation tool in Revit. So, well, if you're curious, it's not that hard. I'll quickly show you. Yeah. So I'll just go back to the floor plan. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's great to do animation. So on the View tab as well, under 3D View, you've got Walkthrough. Same place as you've got Camera, and you can get to it in the same quick access one as well there. And it's quite easy. It's just not done with that camera tool. So with the walkthrough tool, you just click some points where you want to be walking. I won't go up the stairs, that's a bit more involved, but I'll just go take it through here. And let's go around the bed, and then come around the closet, and we'll finish up here, looking up to the backyard. So when you're done, you just click Finish Walkthrough, and it makes a new view type in your project browser. So there's my walkthrough category, and there's the walkthrough one walkthrough, and it's showing where it finishes. And remember, it's a camera, so you can widen the field of view, just like other camera views. So I can see the desk then, and it's a bit high, but I'll show you how to change that in a sec. So to see where it starts, you've got to edit the walkthrough up the top. Just click Edit Walkthrough. If that button isn't there, you just need to click onto the edge of the view. And I'm going to make this one a bit wider, that's a bit narrow. Okay, so once you click Edit Walkthrough, then you get the playback controls. And so that Open Walkthrough button will open the view, but it's already open, so that's not doing anything. But if you've got a plain view or something open, it'll take you to this walkthrough view. And then you've got the playback controls. So if you know about keyframes in animation, the keyframes are basically the points that I clicked. The other one is for frame by frame. We've got 300 frames, so that's going to take me a while to get back to the beginning. But if I go through the keyframes, I'm just going to go previous keyframe. It'll step me back through the points that I clicked. So all the way to the beginning, so that's where I started, and then I'll click the play button, play it through. And you can export those as movies, and if you know about panoramas, you can do those as well, but that's a different thing. So, yeah, and it's actually a good option. You can render these, but sometimes it's just as good if you set it to realistic, and you know, you can tweak the graphics for those as well. I always do this, so I'll, you know, do a few little extra things like turning on ambient shadows at least, and that makes it look a bit nicer. And then go and adjust the exposure a little bit, just so it's a bit more presentable than the standard realistic. There we are, so that looks a bit nicer. And then I'll play it through now. So it's going to go a little bit more slowly because it's using the native hardware capabilities of the computer. But again, you can export that animation just like that. You don't need to render it. So I'll...
So how do you do that?
Oh yes, I'll just cancel this, and so it's just locking up. There we go. So I'll just cancel that down the bottom. Right, so now that I'm happy with it, to export, you just go on the File menu, Export, Images and Animation, and then Walkthrough. And the trick there is to generally leave it on the option that you've chosen in the view. Unless you want to do rendering, and rendering is much more involved because, well, if you think about it, you've been rendering stills, and how long has a good still taken to render, do you think? I have, for anyone who's rendered, how long do you reckon they've taken to just do a medium? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, with SketchUp, yeah, that's with the rendering point. Oh yeah, on the cloud it's a lot quicker, but it's still going to take a bit of time. But the local ones, even on medium, might take, let's say they take 5 minutes once you get everything in there and the lights and yeah. So well, let's even say 2 minutes, which might seem like a really quick render, and it is for a still render. 2 minutes times 300 is 600 minutes, so that's 10 hours. So that's if you've got it rendering at 2 minutes a frame, which is quick. So that's why you generally want to think about it before you choose rendering, because that's a mistake people often make. So again, leave it on the option that you've chosen in the view, and then if you click OK, it'll ask you where you want to save your animation file. Notice it's AVIs by default. So I'll just do that for now. There's other options, but we'll just do AVI. And so you choose where you want to save it. In fact, I'm just going to save this onto the documents for now. Click Save, and it will go through. Oh yeah, I'll let them just go in a sec. I'll speak 2 minutes. So it'll take a little bit longer than just playing through, but not much. So you can see there it's on 2%, but it's already actually a bit further than that. I might let it go, because yeah, it'd be good for you to see the finished result in the movie file or the animation file where you see the real speed. Again, this is playing it as fast as the hardware can do it, and they're pretty good graphics cards. But if you've heard about the new ones, you know, the reason people spend thousands on a graphics card is to get this real-time 3D going a bit faster. I don't know if you've heard about all the NVIDIA, those RTX cards that have come out. Because RT stands for ray tracing, so they have all of this 3D rendering built into those new super expensive RTX cards. They're over $2,000 a card. An RTX? Oh wow! What, the 2080? Oh wow! They're like $3,000 or something, I think. Oh wow! Well, yeah. That's it. They can use it. Yeah. And look, even a friend of mine who's writing for games had got a 1080 a couple of years ago, and that was $2,000. I just thought, geez. Yeah. I mean, I haven't got a 1080, and I do a lot of 3D stuff. But the 1060s, I think, are pretty good value at the moment. And then The 1070s as well. The 1070s are still a little bit expensive. They're about 700-800, but they're still pretty good value compared to what they were. But yeah, the 1080s. I mean, I thought the 1080s were going to come right down, and they're still well over $1,000. Yeah. Oh yes, yeah, sure, I will. Yep. I'll just be 30 seconds. So I'll just quickly show you this movie file. No, don't tell me it didn't work after all that. Yes, I will. Yeah, I'll just be a second. Okay, so unfortunately that didn't save properly, but normally I could just open that file and play an animation for you. So I might just open another one that was done by someone else, just so you've got an idea. Did these people have them? Oh, they didn't. Sorry, I have to go back to previous years. I'll dig them out later. Thought I'd have some there. Oh yeah, here we go. These will be very rough. And I've figured out so much stuff, it's not there anymore. Okay, I won't show you them, but I'll dig out a bunch for you later. Yeah, so it's a shame though, that's normally pretty good at saving. I haven't seen that happen too often. Yeah, that file just, you can see it's got 0K, so that's not going to open unfortunately. Yeah, I'll do that again after we finish the video. That's a bit odd, but again, normally it won't have that problem. And you can even do them without all the fancy notes. You can just do hidden line, and that still works for animation. So yeah, it's a good thing to try, and yeah, the built-in one in Revit's pretty good. If you want to go further with animation though, we've got programs like Lumion here as well that are basically built just to do animation. Have I shown you anything about Lumion so far? No. So in CAD 2 you may do a little bit, but then in the final subject, in 3D